what's fucked up is that my staff they're getting paid more than me.
It's so common.
They're getting paid more, which is true. Like my staff get paid more than me, but they're still asking for more.
Welcome to the CEO Stylist podcast, where two unlikely CEOs come together and rewrite the narrative of what it means to be a CEO stylist. Yovanka, Loria and Kirsten Harris are on a mission, giving stylists permission to join the movement of artists breaking the mould of what is meant to be for the hair industry and creating the life and schedule of their dreams. Fast forward through many failed attempts and lessons learned in the process, it's time to level up the playing field. It's time to call BS on what's been done before. Yovanka and Kirsten are ready to share it all, defying the odds of the industry and teaching you how to do the same.
Welcome back. Hey, friend.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Maxie. We have a special guest today.
We have a special guest, four-legged guest.
Maxie.
Camera may or may not see him, but he's just going to hang out with us.
And hopefully not be heard. Hopefully he's not going to bark today.
So, hot topic of conversation.
Topic of conversation.
This week you've just finished 2 days education, so it was kind of the inspiration for this recording.
It's actually not just the weekend. We had 2 days education over the weekend with incredible stylists. We had, so many come from interstate with this one, from Northern Territory, Melbourne, Queensland, and I really wanted to open up the conversation with them as well and find out, because we had such a good group mix of salon owners and also stylists that were working in a salon. So we went around and just talked about everyone's pain points. So this topic today is geared to more salon owners and business owners, I think, and also hopefully stylists, not just stylists, I shouldn't say stylists because that's where I'm coming from, but I feel like this will also maybe help change the perspective of, people that are getting into an industry or into a business or maybe contemplating working for themselves. I feel like all across the board, it will just open up a conversation that we've been feeling has been happening, not just in our industry, but even, speaking to real estate agents this week and even just speaking to a client who works, for amazing Paulo Sebastian. And she was, she's like, oh my God, I can so relate because here's our version of what's been happening.
And that topic is increasing pay for less hours.
Less work.
And what do we mean by that? So let's unpack it. Should we start with a story?
I think let's start with a story.
Let's start with a story. So in one of the private groups that we are part of outside of the industry, based on education that we've recently completed, we've got a very open but closed communication, and people go in there and they're all business owners at very different stages of their career and their business. And we've got a really interesting one that I think kind of wraps up where we want to talk about this today. So let me go and read this, and I'm going to squint because that apparently makes me read this a bit better. So, anyone else in small business still struggling at the moment? Going through a period of low bookings and high cancellations, which seems to be trending in my industry. I won't name the industry, but it's not hair and beauty, but it is still a service industry. Problem is my business isn't pulling in enough cash. I'm currently spending my normal days working with staff, training them, so the revenue that is being earned is barely covering expenses plus their wages, and some weeks not even that. I haven't pulled a decent wage in over 3 months, and a couple of fortnights haven't paid myself at all. I'm working on some many-to-one services and passive income products, but they won't help with revenue for a while. I'm seriously struggling financially. Obviously, I'm not paying myself. Have been offered the opportunity to take a new role by a family member. I don't know what to do. I can't survive with no income, but I have to work so hard to establish my business. I have staff to think about now too. I've considered going back to working alone, but that limits my income by how many appointments I can do, and it wouldn't be enough. To bring in the kind of cash I need per fortnight, we would need to do 15 to 20-minute appointments a week, which we have never been able to achieve. I cannot see a way forward right now. Boom. That was huge, wasn't it? You can have your phone back now.
Thank you.
So what does that mean? That's really, I think a lot of business owners can relate to that story, whether, same industry or not, where you've got a team and, economy's down, spend is down, particularly here in Adelaide, they've been talking about a lot of restaurants and cafes that are
Closing
closing. So people aren't spending the same sort of money out there. So things are really tightening up. And there's a lot of pressure on business owners. Yet outside of that, the cost of living has gone up. Expenses, it's expensive to live now, particularly in Australia. It's an expensive lifestyle. And particularly in the hair industry, it's difficult to earn a decent income based on if we're governed by the award. So there's a lot of pressure on business owners to be able to
create opportunity.
Pay their staff more.
Correct.
And that's pressure. And I think that pressure goes both ways. I'm sure, business owners feel that's equal pressure to staff not feeling valued.
Correct.
So there's that real disconnect. So that's probably the framework of the discussion today. Where we start from that is, can I go back to the 2 days that you've just had?
Sure, absolutely.
And you mentioned that you went around the room and you were asking for pain points. So you had a combination of salon owners and staff?
And staff.
Yeah. Okay. And they're not connected in any way.
Not connected
And
in
what
any way.
was the pain? Did the pain point of income or working or hours or anything like that come up?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one was everyone's wanting to get paid more.
Yeah.
But the reality is, and I think, everyone obviously came to our 2-day education because they're quite aware. I think now in the industry, I feel lucky enough that, we've been able to create such a niche service that we were able to attract a different type of clientele in order to attract, your high ticket clients that probably valued what we were doing a lot more than your standard service, I guess. That's probably the reality of what we were doing that was so different in the industry. And they've all come because they're like, we're looking for something different. Otherwise, we're all on the way out. Like, I feel like everyone's hanging on by thin thread. And the take was the stylists were, and then the salon owners were, because it's the same thing. And, there was a particular one from Melbourne as well that works for a big chain of salons that you were actually connected to and you used to go to when you used to live in Melbourne. And this particular, we won't reveal because we haven't actually discussed it. We're going to speak about it, but the story is the main thing. She had multiple salons and now she's had to scale right down because, again, this is her operations manager who's had to go back on the floor, has now also realised that she has to create different opportunities for herself as well because there's not enough money in business anymore to be able to pay staff what they want to get paid.
That's it, without everyone contributing.
And I think that's sort of the take that we got from all the other business owners. Like, we want to be able to give these kids the opportunity and pay more, but there's nothing there to give. So what do we do about it?
And the solution is, this could be contrary to unpopular belief. Or popular belief, depending on how you want to look at it. There is no business without a team, in my view. I think that it's very difficult to have an entrepreneurial business that makes good money and supports an income without team. And really, we are, as human beings, we're connected by team, if you look at it that way. So I'm going to flip the narrative a bit and go, I get it, and I've been in that position, and it's an awful position to be in where you're literally scraping from week to week to be able to cover wages. It's a stress that no one wants in business, but it's there. But the narrative I want to also flip is, because I know that there's that pressure, but I come back to, the solution to me is not having a team. If you want, unless you choose to be a solo operator, that's fine. But if you want a business,
you've got to have a team.
You've got to have a team.
Correct.
But so the productivity and the output comes down to how good a leader you really are. And that's probably the unpopular opinion I might get, because I feel like that is part of it.
Correct.
But it's also the roadmap. And we started talking about this conversation the other day. It's the roadmap. So if the only ask, in my opinion, the only ask from an employee is more money, there's a stress behind that. So, and I think it comes from scarcity as well. They are freaking out because there are things that have changed in the business, and therefore they are trying to solidify their role by going, I want more money, I need this, instead of like there being a bigger conversation from the leader to go, here is your path forward. This is what we need you to do in order to get there.
Here is a roadmap.
So it is it's an offensive topic, because I've been in that position, like, my God, how dare they ask me for money? Don't they understand the position I'm in? But I feel like it's kind of two ways.
It's a two-way street.
And we talked about this the other day, because my son's he's in a trade, and he can't influence his income in any way. He's paid a salary and that's it.
And he's finished his apprenticeship?
He's finished his apprenticeship. So he's
So they don't get bonuses based
No,
on what they bring in?
absolutely not.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, he's not in a service-based industry. He's in a trade, but his pathway has been mapped. So his pathway's been mapped because he sees something ahead of him that he wants.
Long term.
So he's willing to put in the hard yards. Now, obviously, there's probably some genetics there that he's been raised to be hardworking, and he doesn't screw up, and he doesn't have sick days, and he's a good man.
He's got the resilience.
He's got the resilience, but I've never heard the conversation at home, well, I expect to get paid for that extra hour. And we started talking about this the other day, and I'm like, well, why is it different for someone like him compared to like a conversation that took place in your education where there is an expectation of being paid for that hour? And it's not about owners taking the piss. It's really that I think the shortcomings is they don't know what the future is. So therefore, their only request is, I need the money.
And if I'm working...
Because it's just a job, it's transactional.
That's right. And I think exactly what you just said, the thing is with service-based industries, like, hey, it really is it going to be a job or is it going to be a career?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. And what you're speaking about is, a lot, and it's come up in conversation as well, where just to lay it out. So if a staff member has to stay back, we're like, what's your pain point? And, it's come up before. We've all heard it where, why, if I'm staying back, why am I not getting paid for that hour? And then there was another business owner in the room as well that just interjected and was like, hey, let me just try shift that perspective, because she had a business as well for 11 years.
Yeah.
And so can I just ask you a question? In your work week, do you have pockets where you're not actually servicing clients? And she said, yeah, I am. And I think this is where it comes to where, as someone that's working in a wage, that has that backing of that regular income, if they're not working, you're not generating income. So
That's
the
right.
way that the owner, because I think also hairdressing is really sales, it's income generated. Apart from it, because KPIs shouldn't just be about money, but at the end of the day, there's a lot more to KPIs, key performance indicators or key performance objectives, that what's going to make the success, salon run successfully, apart from just bringing in money. Because money is just a byproduct of all the other things that you have to do. That's going to be able to service the clients, bring the clients in, know your product, know your retail. It's just a small part of it. Do your social media, right? So if you're, and we've heard it all before from salon owners where, everyone's hanging around the table or the back room where they're speaking, they're chatting, they're not doing any social media, they're not doing anything in return, but then they want to get paid if they stay back an hour, but they don't look at all their little pockets in the day, which might add up to 5-6 hours a week that they're not actually working.
So what we're talking about is productivity versus booked time, which in most point of sale systems, that's actually a report that you can run.
Correct.
And I know that I don't think any stylist could ever be at 100% productive. I know when I had salons, the benchmark was 90%, and it was fucking tough to get there.
So hard.
It is tough. So, and that's what we want as business owners. We want every hour booked, maximized.
Correct.
What's the solution? Because I guess I'm into schools of thought. If you've got an employee that works an extra hour overtime, if they were in another environment, let's say a retail environment, they'd get paid. You
wouldn't think. On that note, I said, here's the reality of it, and this is why you guys got to ask yourself, in order to fix this problem, and not problem, but to find a solution. And I just also wanted to take note, because now we've got a lot of young girls that are working in an airline, or they've quit their job, or they've gone to work in what's the other one that we have a lot of young girls work as nurses.
thought you were going to say strippers.
No, only fans. They work as nurses, and nursing is, they don't count their hours either, because every job has extra requirements that's not capped on time. So if a nurse, for example, is doing her shift work or her hours, will still have to sit once she's clocked off and fill out all her notes.
Yeah.
And that might take an hour or 2 hours. They don't get paid for it. To give you another
It's a good
example,
point.
it's a really good point. Another example, air hostess. If they haven't taken off for an hour, how planes get delayed and they haven't taken off for an hour, they do not get paid for the hour. They only get paid when they take off.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that.
Exactly. So I think, and again, is that considered a job, or is that considered a career? I think also the thing is that was coming up in topic, because it's very different. It's in our industry, it's a little bit hard to gauge it, because you're talking about apprentices that work from the ground up that are starting on a really low wage. But then there's also, if a qualified senior is coming into a business, like one of the owners that used to have her own business has gone now on the opposite side and is working for a salon in Queensland. She's like, I've got all these years experience, and now I'm on the receiving end where he doesn't even want to pay me for my experience. So we get both points, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
And that's why she's like, that's why I've taken the initiative. And he said to me, if you want to get paid more, then what value are you bringing? You need to bring extra value in order to be able to justify how we can pay you more.
Where I'm like coming from the perspective of, what comes first, the employee or the staff member or team member adds the value, or does, as the salon owner, have a responsibility to create the environment?
Well, good question, because I do think a lot of it does come down to culture, because I feel like what you're saying, and it happens a lot, because if you're in scarcity mode mindset and you've got this fear, you're not even going to be able to see opportunities in order to be able to create a culture to create the opportunity.
So I just was listening to a podcast on the way here, and they talk about that being the reptilian culture, where it's in that scarcity and you make crazy decisions. And and I come back to what I was saying before, like as a business owner, it's you can't run a business without a team. Now it comes down to what kind of team you're going to attract. So the best leaders will attract a team that is cohesive, and but then equally the team members want to be part of something that they feel like they're contributing in a higher value.
Exactly.
They feel like that they're part of a team, because that's our human disposition. That's primarily, if you think about the best of team sports, they're not single.
It's so true. And I think even, coming back from Kerwin Ray, you just, triggered my memory, because the way that he has a reward system, he doesn't reward just based on how much income you're bringing in. He has a very different reward system. I'll actually drop the book. I don't know if you remember that book. It's called Drive, How to Build a Culture in a Team that's more just about bringing in money. Because here's the reality. I think that's what's happening in not just our industry. Everyone's wanting more money, but they're not realizing that in order, there has to be some form of fulfillment. There has to be some form of fulfillment, because you remember what happened, and I can discuss about it openly now. Even a couple of years ago, one of my staff, Emma, it's actually her last day today, so I'm going to try not to be, I'm not going to try to be emotional, but it's her last day with me, but she's still moving on to Cairns, still working for me, but she's actually gone from employee to self-employed, right? And I'm going to be her client or her customer. But what happened 2 years ago is that she got an offer to go work for a bigger company than me, who offered her a lot more money than what I was able to provide. And I think this is where it comes down to, because there's bigger companies, a lot bigger companies that can offer more money than what a small business, what us small. And I think this is where we sit in that disconnect, because we're small business owners.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is the reality. She came to me, and because she was questioning her value, right? And at the end of the day, we had to really come to her and be like, look, if you were going to take that role, I wouldn't even be mad about it. And she had to make a decision. I mean, it put me in a position where I was like, right, now I've got this. What can I offer her? Because she was phenomenal and amazing. What can we do to be able to figure out how we're going to be able to pay them more? I couldn't offer what they were offering. Couldn't, but we did. We were put in a position because of that opportunity to maybe think, maybe we do need to step up and create an opportunity for what these big companies are offering. But in the sense, she chose to stay. And I'm talking, it was probably about 15, 20 grand difference, which most people, let's be real, you've got a story to talk about it. And I spoke about it with my husband, Vlad, as well this morning. And he's like, as a man, men are more intrinsically operated to go for the money.
Of course, because they're
not
inherently
emotionally
the
the
providers.
provider. And that's why he said, why wouldn't we take it if someone else was offering 20? It wouldn't even be a no-brainer. They wouldn't even question, how do I feel about the role? Whereas with women, and I said to Emma very clearly, like, if you do go work for the company, just remember you're going to be more, they're very structured. Here, I offer things that those big companies don't offer. So with me, I offer flexibility. I offer, growth in the sense that I was giving Emma the freedom to learn why she was here and giving her that growth plan. Whereas when you go work for those companies, you're kind of more tied into a structure. So with that, she might have got paid more, but she would have been restricted on all the things that she values, as time management, as in having a say, because you're really conformed into the expectations of a role that's already been set and created. Whereas with me, we technically were not a startup at that point, but we were a company that's in growth and growing. And that's what we're saying, is that she was happy to not take that for that offer, because she was more intrinsically excited about the growth that we could provide.
So did you see what you did there?
What did I do
when
there?
you had that conversation with her? So you took the focus off income and you gave her a pathway to a future. And that's what I come back to about that whole leadership and that culture. It really comes back to as a business owner, and I know it's like, I'm sure people are going to say, well, but if the money's not there, the money's not there. It doesn't
100%.
matter. And I get that. But in order to expect more, you've got to be more.
You've got to be more.
As
That's
a leader,
exactly.
to get more out of your team.
And I still said to her in the end, if you still chose that, it wouldn't affect our relationship, because if you decided to take it, I would support you no matter what. So 2 years later, it's Emma's last day today. We're still supporting each other. This is the part of, the growth that, you've got to create these opportunities for them, because I could have essentially lost Emma over that and not being able to create that role for her. Whereas now, 2 years on, she's still growing and she's been able to do her own thing. It taught me that this is no ways about it, but we have to adjust as leaders. And the kid was here some nights till 7:30. Here I am, because I start work at 4 and I finish at 5:30. They were my hours, and I'd feel terrible that she was sometimes still here at 7:30. But at the end of the day, the reality is she wasn't just doing it for me. She was really doing it for herself, because we created that path. And I was always open from day one and said, wherever this leads us, we're always going to stick together so that you can grow within my business. You're growing my business, but you're still growing you.
Yeah,
and I think
true. It's a good example.
I think it's a really good example. And I think someone that's coming into businesses and they're right off the bat, it's kind of that, I hate that word entitlement, but if they're coming off the bat with no experience and they just, in their 20s, haven't had that much experience, and they're, you hear it all the time, they finish uni and they're like, I want to start at 100K.
And that's been an issue for as long as I've been working.
Even back then?
Absolutely. I think it's always been an issue. I know because I don't have a university degree, when I first started working, and I distinctly remember a conversation that went around the office. There was a kid that they were going to employ, he was out of uni, and the immediate blame was on university. Oh, the unis have put this, this idea in their head that they're worth so much more, even in like my early days of international logistics. So, I've got the equivalent of TAFE education, where you had kids that were coming with finance and international trade as a degree, and there was an expectation they were going to be paid more. But we always blame university for that, but it was just, I guess it was just this standard was a bit different. It didn't mean that they were worth more just because they had that. Again, I think things have changed a little bit, but I'm talking outside of the service industry. There was, does an employer pay more for experience or education?
Experience.
So that has not changed, right? I knew you were going to say that. I feel the same way. Does it matter if they've got the experience, proven experience? You're going to pay for that.
Correct.
If they've got a degree but they haven't got the actual
Experience.
hands-on experience, they're not. The value's not there yet. They might be down the track worth a lot more. Who knows? But I guess, you know, it's, what do they say? The cart before the horse. What do you do first? Because everyone needs to live. The cost of living is there. We've got a lot to be responsible for in this country. The cost of living is just huge. And I know, having a near 23-year-old son, the thought of him moving out of home and rent, like the rental crisis.
He just couldn't do it.
There's no way that
That's right. And that's another really good point, because I think also we come from families that we were able to, you know, be at home and build our experience in order to get to a point to bring value, to be able to then, you know, ask for what we wanted. Whereas a lot of these kids are living out of home.
Yeah.
You know, it happens
And it's
even
expensive.
it's expensive, so we get it.
Yeah.
But I think as a small business owner, do you want to maybe just touch on, as a business owner, because even when we were speaking about this in front of stylists, they really had no idea how, not just wages, but how super work, you know, work cover, payroll,
Well, it's like-
PAYG.
It's like another 24%
And
on
between-
top of what you get in your hand as an employee. Just add another 24%, and that's what we're paying.
Now, do you want to, when you say that's what we're paying, do you want to maybe elaborate on what actually we're having to pay when you employ someone? Like the liability of having a staff member, that you have to be able to cover the annual leave, the sick days.
Oh, yeah, okay, I get you. Yeah.
You get me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, you negotiate an hourly rate, and we're always like, I'm going to go back to the hair industry. So you have the award there. So the award is your benchmark. And then, of course, a conversation will take place, and yours, because there's a scarcity of staff, of skilled staff, we also have this added pressure that anyone that is semi-good that's going to come our way, we're going to employ them, right? We've all been in that position. So, and then that, I guess you know, in some ways, the issue of personality sometimes goes out the window, because you have to force a hand and fill a hole, because you're in this fear that if you don't fill the hole, you'll lose your client. So you'll stop the gap and you'll employ this person. They say, well, you know, I've been offered a job paying an extra $5 an hour. And you go, okay, well, I'll do it sight unseen. You've employed them. So let's say, for argument's sake, they're on $30 an hour. That's cool. But then on top of that, you know, you just add another 24% for super, for work cover, for other insurances. Then you've got product costs for that extra person. So that's another like upwards of 5%. But then, of course, you know, we've got this thing called annual leave and sick leave. So that has to be covered somewhere, whether or not...
Where they're not bringing it, the
Well,
performance
they're
isn't...
completely out of the... So when I talk to my clients and we're talking about commission structure and they're asking for guidance, you know, oh, well, rule of thumb is I've just really times it by 3. And this seems to be this trend that's...
It was
it's
times
come
3
from-
from 20 years ago.
But it's come from somewhere. I'm like, why do you do that? Like, okay, I get the times 3, but how many weeks are you calculating this? Well, 52, because there's 52 weeks a year. Okay, cool. But your staff aren't working 52 weeks. They're 52 weeks in the year,
46.
but they're
It's
not...
46, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's like this thing called annual leave, and then annual leave, plus you've got leave loading. So let's add another 17.5% for leave loading. And then there's sick leave. And then there's public holidays. So all that amasses to like 8 weeks that they're completely out of your business. And then what happens if they come to you and say, actually, I want to go to Europe in the European summer. I'd like more than 4 weeks.
I need more time.
I need 6 weeks. And then so there's this conversation about unpaid leave, where the staff member thinks they're doing you a favour because, well, you don't need to pay me while I'm not in the business, where they don't understand even the impact of that. Fuck, I'd rather pay you perform and hit
have the loss
your
of income.
targets, and we get the income back into the business, because we can't replace your role for a period of time where you're out of the business. So I guess it's like it's a real gap in communication between employees and business owners. And it doesn't become an issue until they're in the position, and it then becomes awareness. But, you know, no one wants to have a team where they don't feel valued and they don't feel like they're being paid what they are worth either. So it's this what do you do first? You know, so have I answered your question?
No, you have. And I think the more transparent that I've been with the staff when I sit them down and explain the formula of how it works as a business and the expenses. And, I've spoken to so many stylists that come on that have salons, and I always ask them, do you have KPIs for your staff? And it's actually, and I was probably one of them in the beginning as well, like when they don't have the KPIs, how do the team members know what value they're bringing?
Well, it's like getting in the car and driving without looking in the front.
Where you're going forward.
Where you're going.
Yeah, so I think that conversation...
But it's a fear. I get that though. Salon owners, well, I'm not going to say salon owners, business owners don't want to talk about the finance stuff that often, except if you're in a sales role where it really does matter. But hairdressers...
hair is kind of sales without being salesy.
It is.
Right?
It really is. Like but in a professional... state it is, and we all, if we're in a income driven role, then we have to take responsibility for that, whether or not you own the business or you're employed. If you want to keep your job, you have to find a way to contribute. So if there, and I guess another unpopular opinion is gaps in roster or gaps in appointments, not roster. You're rostered on for, because whether or not you've got a full book of clients coming in or not, if you're employed full time, we as business owners, our responsibility is to make sure that you are paid. Because how would you feel like, I think it happens this way in the States, right? If you don't have clients, I know it happens this way in Ireland. I do.
Happens in the States.
See you later. You've got no clients, go home. You don't get paid. But here we have this rule to protect everyone, really. But I always used to say, and I think that this is probably one of my biggest pieces of advice, if you're going to go down the path of having conversations with your team about contribution, it's get them to consider their column like it's their own business. Because if they were out on their own and they had one client booked in today, how are they going to pay their bills?
Correct.
So then how is it any different for a business owner? So it's a two-way street, in my opinion. So if you don't have clients, then what are you going to do about it? Because there's this unwritten rule, well, it's the business owner's responsibility. And I know, running a marketing agency, I know my clients that work with me, they are really committed to being able to bring more business in for everyone. Not because they want to be millionaires, it's because they want to run a business and they have decided they want a team. But it's stressful when they have a team, they're paying them, but there's no business.
And they're just solely relying, like you said, on the business. And where the business is more KPI driven, which KPI to me is also social media.
And and I know we're going to talk about this on a future podcast. We are going to talk about sales in the environment of a service industry and responsibility on everyone to generate income generating business.
And let me ask you a question as well, because obviously, we've spoken about this years ago when you had a staff member in Sydney, because it really doesn't happen here.
Yeah.
And, I thought about doing it before COVID hit. Like when you have a consistent staff member that's been with you, for a few years, has built it up, the natural thing to do would be to work out how much income they bring for the year, and then you can negotiate a salary.
Yeah.
Because they're
take it off an hourly rate.
Take it off an hourly rate and you give them a salary. Because salary, and do you want to maybe explain what the difference between salary and hourly rate is?
Well, I mean, hourly rate, I'll go back to an hourly rate because that's how the Hair and Beauty Award system looks. Everything is managed per hour. You're paid a rate from Monday to Friday. You're paid a rate on Saturday and a rate on Sunday. And so you can't, by law, we can't uncontract the award. So that's got to be the baseline for how we're negotiating with future staff members. But I know in Sydney and Melbourne, because the cost of living is higher, the chances of them being able to survive on, it's been a while since I've owned salons, of $24, $25, $26 an hour is highly unlikely. Like it's just, so they're either going to do something illegal or they're going to do stuff on the side.
Correct.
So close the gap, because people become desperate. It's going to do desperate things. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's what happens.
A salary is?
So a salary is like you'll go, okay, so it's annualized over a 52-week period, knowing that they'll only work between 46 and 48 weeks. What are you prepared to pay them per year? So it could be like a $65,000 salary. As long as that doesn't fall under the hourly rate that they would normally get if they were under an award, you're right to do it.
And it gives them a guarantee.
Gives them a guarantee. Even if you pay them per hour and you've employed them full time, it gives them. I hope everyone knows the basics that they're guaranteed 38 hours.
Plus, you would still offer commission if they.
Yes,
so you would do
absolutely.
salary plus commission because they're still
absolutely.
being sales if
but,
they make.
But if their salary is higher, their targets are higher.
Correct.
It's all commensurate.
But they're still guaranteed without having to try to do multiple clients or extra clients to hit your targets in order to make that little bit extra.
Yes.
Whereas whether you're doing 38 hours or whether you're doing 41 or 42 hours, it really doesn't go based on time. It goes based on results.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you.
Like, I know that some people might go, well, is that actually legal? But we never had a conversation about how many hours is it.
Because they still had to keep that performance up.
Well, yeah.
That's
and
the thing.
Target was quite high, really.
Correct. So with that, I think what happened also after COVID, because it was hit and miss, like nowadays you don't hear a lot of business or salons, we can't pay salary because it's so inconsistent.
Yeah. I think I know where you're going to go with this one.
Where?
About COVID.
Well, with COVID, it just really shattered that whole consistency of, because there were so many cancellations, had busy periods. Even now, like with us, what's happening, this year, this is where it's going to be really, really tough. Businesses are doing it really tough.
But we also, which you and I talked about the other day, we were also up against that pressure of, through COVID, employed staff were paid to do nothing. Now,
you mean from the government?
Yeah, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Someone had somewhere along the line had to take responsibility, but that did not negate the pressure that we all had as salon owners
when they came back.
Because landlords were still asking for rent, whether or not we were trading or not. So, and of course we wanted to make sure, our people were well looked after, but they then developed a taste, depending on, I can't imagine what it was like in Melbourne. They developed a taste for being paid for doing very little. So I think that was
created a massive dent.
Well, the other thing is people still got their hair done. Whether or not it was
in the salon or outside?
Outside of the salon, people still got their hair done. How was that being transacted? Through cash. So again, that also fostered this environment where,
oh my God, I can do more for less.
Correct.
But they were not taking into consideration how a business is actually run and all the expenses that a business carries and the risk that a business carries.
So my message is really for the solopreneur that, you may have had this taste to go out on your own because you want something that someone in your, like either someone that you follow, someone that you've worked under, you want something that they've got as well, which is not a bad thing. But there's no team in solopreneur. There is no team in that whatsoever.
You can only go so far.
You are trading time for money. I'm like, come back. We need to come back to grassroots, have salons, have a team of people, have an environment where our consumers, they don't enjoy sitting across someone's kitchen sink or
like a portable basin, having their hair washed.
About that.
It's true. They miss. You're so right about that because we have had a couple that have gone to home salons.
Yeah.
And even though, let's be real, I was a home salon when I first started, but I didn't have a portable.
No.
I didn't have a portable salon. If you're going to have a home salon, have a proper setup.
Have a setup.
A setup. But I guess what is the solution? Where do you see?
Well, the solution is that I think there's a meet in the middle. So there needs to be a meet in the middle between the business owner and the employee as well. And I say that, like I say it with those boundaries, because that's really what it is at the end of the day. We can be family and whatever, but if you fuck up as an employer, you're going to hear about it. Like, they'll give you feedback, but equally that has to go the other way. So it's like creating a team culture where everyone's contributing. You create that beautiful, happy environment where it attracts the right clients to your business. So then you don't have this deviation where team are starting to go, well, I want to go out on my own and do what she's doing because she seems to earn more money and I feel like I'm going to be appreciated, because that dream will bust.
And this is the reality. Like, every single business owner that I speak to, they're like, everyone's going, what's fucked up is that my staff they're getting paid more than me.
It's so common.
They're getting paid more, which is true. Like, my staff get paid more than me, but they're still asking for more.
But this might be whole nother podcast. there are so many more, and I don't want to go, oh my God, you're so lucky because you're a staff member, you're an employee, but they've got actually more rights to borrowing than a business owner.
That's true.
Yeah, how hard it is to
true.
even borrow money, even for basics like trying to borrow a house or buy a car. As an employee, regardless of the state of that business, they have way more opportunities to producing pay slips. Going, I'm in employed work. I've been employed for more than 6 months, and the banks will go, sure, stamp. I'll lend you money. You go as a business owner. I've been in business for 2 years. It's been a bit rocky. Can I borrow money, please? No, sorry, you're a shithead. Come back. You come back. So it's just the most, and that is, I see that a lot.
That's a really good point, because a lot of people that do go out on their own, that are going to rent a chair, because, potentially down, after everyone we had a few staff members leave, I was looking, because I'm always looking long term as well, and I'm thinking, how can I, without having the constraints of the massive tax and GST and all the expenses that we have to, that eats into being able to pay, the team more because of the massive, business behind the scenes expenses that we have. And I was like, maybe down the track that I could, do rent a chair. Is it profitable? Is it beneficial? But the reality is also with a staff member, I'm like, I can create the opportunity for you, but where do you want to be with your goals? Because if you want to be able to invest, in a property, or you want to buy your own house, no bank is going to look at you.
No.
Is it, 2-3 years?
2 years. But
2
you
years.
need to have a profitable business.
And who makes profit in the first 2 years? Because
Yeah.
are you declaring everything?
Yeah,
Are you
that's
taking
right.
cash?
Exactly.
Because, to be fair, if I was in a position, what I'm in now, when I first started 20 years ago, and I speak about it openly, I would have fucked it up.
Yeah.
Because you think that money is yours.
Yes.
But
that's
it's
it.
not.
Yeah.
And I've heard it, it only happened recently as well, where I had a staff member who was saying, I was working for someone, I just went out on my own, I did less clients, I made more. Like, but did you put that through your books?
Yeah.
No.
Or let's go out and buy the BMW
Let's
and
go buy-
Mercedes because,
I wanna-
and we know, right, who, well, I am talking about someone in particular. Yeah, don't worry about that tax bill that's going to, because the ATO aren't contacting you yet, but they will second year in business, and you keep buying up stupid assets. And I know we say that being older and wiser, we've all been in that situation, but I come back to when you are in business and you want to borrow money, and sure, it's all about tax planning, and that's not what this podcast is about, but let's say hypothetically you don't declare everything. Well, that also goes against you, because then the bank's going to only look at your balance sheet and your revenue and go, well, you're not earning enough to even
income.
Service
service alone, that's right.
So I think I come back to, let's come back together. Let's
try figure it out.
Let's meet in the middle and come back together and
We're-
create a culture where we've got a team and we're happy and we're all contributing to something and everyone gets looked after.
And make sure you're working, have a conversation with your boss, sit down, because I think also where people are scared as well, like, looking back at us, why would these young ones put their trust in a leader if they're working all these extra hours? They're looking at it like it's building their boss, but I look at it as like it's actually building you and your skill,
future. Yeah.
your future, and it might not benefit and pay off now, because if you went and did your own business, it still wouldn't pay off and benefit, but you're building your skill, you're building your time so that you can earn more money. But it's a problem when leaders don't come to the table and want to meet them halfway.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it at that. Have the
Yeah.
conversation. As leaders, we need to also step up a little bit more and take ownership.
Definitely
and like you
step
said,
up.
step
Yeah.
up and have those open conversations.
And have those ugly conversations about the money. Like, I'm not saying open your books and show your team, but open your books and show your team where you're at. It's nothing, whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, like it's, at the end of the day, I think if you're an employee, you want to be part of something that is successful, has a plan to be, but you need to be that leader, that inspirational leader. So even if the income's not there, at least there's a future promise. That's how I see it.
And I hope one day on a podcast you can share your story, because I always listen to your story when you were like, I got caught up in the shiny object. Remember how you got offered?
Oh, when I was young.
When you were young, you got
Yeah,
offered, because that's a reality. I want to know, if someone's going to offer you more money, what's going to
Yeah.
make you take it and what's going to make you not take it?
Don't sell your soul to the devil.
Don't sell your soul.
That's my closing.
True.
Don't sell your soul
Because
to
what
the
happened
devil.
within how long did you realise it wasn't?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, people are on their best behaviour in an interview, whether or not you're the employer or the employee. You don't see anything. In that situation, I was the employee. People are on their best behaviour. You don't see that stuff.
It's true. That's a
Yeah.
whole nother
Don't
podcast.
sell your soul to the devil.
Don't sell your
kids.
soul to the devil, guys. Just make sure that, you know, we keep that space open.
Yeah.
And we just continue to grow, and we can continue to try get through this crazy year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And-
I think there'll be some reprieve, but we're definitely like watching. I was working back late the other night, and we've got a bunker down over the next 6 months.
That's true.
It's definitely with.
I
There
think
are
it's
going to be
actually
some
going to be.
stories.
I think it's
out.
going to be probably a couple of years in order for businesses to bounce back.
Yeah.
We just got to stick together and make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you.
girlfriend.